Hey, it's Janelle Waz, and welcome back to another Star Trek video. Back when Star Trek Picard was announced, I had this idea for an episode if Star Trek Picard was a true sequel to Star Trek The Next Generation. It would be a continuation of the Next Gen Season 5 episode The Perfect Mate, which saw Picard become close to, maybe even fall in love with, a metamorph named Kamala, who was destined to marry the Chancellor of another planet in order to ensure peace. And yes, Kamala is played by Famke Janssen, who would later star alongside Patrick Stewart in the X-Men movies. Professor X and Jean Grey almost dated. The Perfect Mate isn't a top episode of mine, but I do like it, and I'm struck by its poignancy and quiet romance. And then, Star Trek Picard Season 1 came and went, and it was very different from The Next Generation, not the sequel that some had hoped. Some fans loved it, others hated it. Personally, I only saw the first episode and wasn't really pulled in. Nevertheless, I never forgot about my episode idea, and I decided to share it with all of you this week on YouTube. Now, I'm not much of a fan fiction writer, largely because, like greats like George Lucas, I have ideas, but I'm not so great with writing dialogue. So this is more of an outline to an episode with very limited dialogue. I also tried to keep the episodic nature of Next Gen in mind when I wrote this outline, so while it is a sequel episode, it's pretty self-contained. But before I go any further, make sure you subscribe to my channel. I make a lot of great Star Trek, video game, and miscellaneous content for you to enjoy. Be great to have you aboard. And now, without further ado, I present to you my Star Trek episode, Kamala of Valt.
Think when we talk of horses that you see them.
Admiral Picard, still commanding the USS Enterprise, makes out his Admiral's log. In it, he states that the Enterprise has been assigned to hosting a diplomatic conference between the planets of Valt and Krios, two previously warring planets which he had been instrumental in bringing together under a peace treaty that included the arranged marriage of Valtese Chancellor, Ulrich of Valt, and Kamala of Krios some years ago. Also in attendance will be Picard's former first officer, Captain Riker, as well as his wife Deanna Troi Riker, the Enterprise's former counselor. While the major dignitaries of both Krios and Valt will be in attendance, Picard believes it unlikely that the Chancellor or his wife will be in attendance as they will have other duties to attend to. The conference goes underway in 10 Forward, with Guinan providing catering, of course. But there is tension in the air among the two groups, as observed by Deanna. While socializing with the dignitaries, Picard runs into a familiar face from so many years ago. Kamala, alone. The scene fades to the opening credits. Both Picard and Kamala are pleased to see each other once again after so many years, and they reconnect throughout the evening in 10 Forward. Picard inquires after Ulrich, and Kamala grows quiet. She informs Picard that Ulrich had passed away about 6 months ago, to which Picard expresses his condolences. He changes the subject and continues to converse with her as an old friend, but inwardly finds it odd that Kamala attended this function at all. The evening goes smoothly in 10 Forward, but the tension between the Kriosans and Valtese lingers. The next day, Picard stops by Kamala's quarters to see if there's anything she needs. She invites him in as an old friend for a chat and offers him tea. Earl Grey, of course, she knows it's his favorite. Picard is hesitant to join her alone in her quarters, but does so anyways. Picard again makes his apologies for not knowing about Ulrich, to which Kamala puts him at ease and tells him not to worry about it. However, Kamala observes Picard's curiosity and surprise at her presence on the Enterprise, something that startles Picard as he had forgotten about her empathic abilities. She reveals that since Ulrich's death, his duties fell upon her until the next election of a new Chancellor, which she willingly took up as it was the least she could do. The least you could do, Picard inquires. Kamala explains that she never imprinted Ulrich on herself to become his perfect mate, one of the terms of the treaty that united Krios and Valt. She had spent her married life putting on the act that she had, using her empathic abilities to determine the kind of mate Ulrich wanted. Since Ulrich was more interested in the treaty provisions and not his new wife, he didn't suspect anything was amiss up to the day he died. Picard is stunned at this. However, he receives a call to come to the bridge and takes his leave of Kamala. But Kamala stops him for a moment longer. She reveals that before Picard walked her down the aisle to marry Ulrich, She imprinted Picard on herself, becoming his perfect mate. She then tells Picard, "I am for you, Jean-Luc Picard."
I am for you, Ulrich of Valt.
Both speechless and knowing he's wanted on the bridge, Picard takes his leave of Kamala and leaves. Picard pauses a moment to process what she had just told him before heading to the bridge. Kamala is left in her quarters, sensing Picard's conflicted emotions. Upon entering the bridge, Picard is informed that two of the dignitaries, one from Valt and the other from Krios, were involved in a fight and both were escorted to the brig. They're expected to be released tomorrow, but it's only a symptom of a much larger problem. Tensions continue to rise on the Enterprise between the Valtese and the Kriosians, but neither side will discuss it. Troi senses there's a point of contention between the two groups, but she cannot sense what. Even using her counseling skills and conversation proves to be fruitless. The scene changes to the Arboretum and Picard walking with Kamala. Picard asks her what has come between the two peoples. Why are tensions so high at the conference? Kamala says the historical conflict between the two peoples is part of it, but there's something more. The Dominion War devastated much of Krios. Its economy relied on refining an ore, Kriosite. Most of the mining colonies that mined Kriosite were destroyed during the Dominion War, making Kriosite not only rare, but expensive. The search for a new source of Kriosite has proven fruitless. However, one of the Valtese moons is rich in it, but because the moon is sacred to the Valtese refuse to even set foot on the moon, let alone mine it. The Kriosians see this refusal to help as a betrayal, and while war hasn't broken out, relations have not been good between the two peoples. Picard offers to have his science division look into it, and Kamala is grateful. Continuing the walk, Kamala senses that something else is weighing on Picard's mind. Though initially reluctant to talk about it, Picard opens up at Kamala's urging. Why did Kamala choose to imprint Picard on herself, becoming his perfect mate? Leaving out the treaty altogether, there were other men who vied for her attention. In fact, Picard went out of his way to appear as dull as possible. Smiling, Kamala says that while other men had a specific type of woman they were attracted to, Picard was different. He didn't want a woman to conform to his every desire. He wanted a woman who was truly herself, and it was only in front of Picard that she could truly be herself. She felt a sense of freedom being near Picard. They could talk for hours on end about a variety of topics that she was familiar with: literature, politics, archaeology, and even current events. Picard is clearly touched by her answer, but remains silent, still unsure how to proceed. They continue their walk as the scene fades out. Picard begins another Admiral's log. In it, he notes the tensions between the Kriosians and Valtese are due to a shortage of Kriosite, an ore which the Krios system is named. According to Acting Chancellor Kamala, the Kriosians wished to strike a deal with the Valtese so they could gain access to the Kriosite on one of Valt's moons and recover their dying economy. The Valtese are unwilling to mine their moon and suggest the Kriosians adjust their economy, but the Kriosians counter that they need resources to do that, which they lack. Picard has assigned a team to research possible alternatives, and he has been working closely with Kamala. Picard and Kamala continue to spend more time with each other, officially to resolve the Kriosite crisis. But during their time together, Picard develops renewed feelings for Kamala. The Kriosians and Valtese begin to take notice. Rumors begin to circulate during the conference, when the Kriosians and Valtese aren't fighting, of course. Why should the Admiral and the widow of Chancellor Ulrich spend so much time together? The wife of Chancellor Ulrich was Ulrich's perfect mate. After his passing, she wouldn't seek out a new mate, unless she was never Ulrich's perfect mate. Overhearing the rumors is Ambassador Briam. Yes, the same Ambassador Briam from the Next Gen episode. Briam doesn't want to see the treaty dissolved or war to break out. He does his best to quell the rumors, but he knows that he must talk to Picard about his relationship with Kamala. Meanwhile, the Science Division has failed to synthesize a substitute for Kriosite. Scans of nearby planets also don't indicate an untapped source of it. Even contacting various cultures for trade in Kriosite have turned up nothing. In Picard's ready room discussing the Kriosite crisis, Captain Riker offers to contact Quark from Deep Space Nine for any leads on where to find Kriosite. After all, Quark owes him some slips of latinum from his last visit to the station. Picard remarks that he's surprised Riker is still even allowed at Quark's after all the winning he's accumulated over the years. Riker remarks slyly that there are other forms of payment. Picard agrees to let Riker go to DS9 and allows Riker to borrow a runabout. Don't worry, not the kind that crash. Just about to pick up a pad to go over reports after Riker's departure from the ready room, the chime rings. Ambassador Briam enters. Picard welcomes him in, saying he regrets that he hasn't had much of a chance to talk at length with him since his arrival. Picard offers the ambassador some tea, which Briam refuses. Briam's tone turns serious, and he says there's something important he needs to discuss with Picard. He informs Picard of the rumors circulating about him and Kamala among the delegates. A flash of embarrassment overcomes Picard for a moment, but he quickly recovers and tells Briam that he and Kamala are simply old friends who haven't seen each other in years. Briam pauses, having seen the flash of embarrassment in Picard's face. He knows Picard is hiding his feelings, though he doesn't mention it. Briam begins to tell Picard of the tensions between Krios and Valt, but Picard interrupts him, saying that Kamala has already told him about those tensions. Briam then informs him that the situation is much more serious than Kamala knows. These are desperate people. War is coming, and if it wasn't for the treaty that included Kamala's marriage to Ulrich, war would have broken out already. If that treaty is called into question, there will be nothing to prevent war. It would be devastating for both planets. Picard asks why the treaty would be called into question, and Briam reveals that one of the terms of the treaty was that Kamala would imprint Ulrich on herself and become his perfect mate. If she were to even be involved with another man, let alone remarry, it would expose that she was never for Ulrich, invalidating the treaty. Silent, Picard is hit with a wave of emotions, though he retains his composure. After a pause, Briam asks Picard to please consider all of this. He leaves the ready room, leaving Picard to sit in quiet contemplation. Arriving on Deep Space Nine, Riker makes his way to Quark's. He sets himself up at the Dabo tables and begins racking up the latinum. Quark, having heard the word Dabo one too many times, makes his way to the Dabo tables, worried about the state of his profits. He then sees who's at the Dabo table and lets out an, "Oh no, not again." Riker smiles at Quark, and Quark greets the bearded captain, still as dashing as ever in his old age, and offers to buy him a drink, if only to get him away from the Dabo tables. He even offers Riker a session or two in the holosuites, though Riker reminds him that he's a married man now. "A baseball game then! You humans love baseball." Smiling, Riker says, "Don't worry, Quark, your latinum is safe from me. Perhaps we can do an exchange." "Of what?" "Information." "Oh, information is hard to come by." "Perhaps I'll take a few more spins at Dabo." All right. Rule of acquisition number 7. Keep your ears open. What do you want to know?" Riker asks Quark what he knows about Kriosite. With a chuckle, Quark states that genuine Kriosite is hard to come by indeed. More than likely it's... well, never mind about that. Riker presses Quark to finish his sentence, reminding him that he still owes Riker his Dabo winnings, but he's willing to forget about it. With a glance towards his Dabo tables, Quark relates that he knows some dealers in Kriosite, and some of their secrets as well. Before the wormhole opened up, Kriosite was fairly rare indeed, only found in systems around Krios. But with access to the Gamma Quadrant through the wormhole, the Kriosite industry found that they could dilute their quantities of Kriosite with a similar but much more common ore only found in the Gamma Quadrant, increasing their profits, but no one the wiser. When asked about this ore, Quark just so happened to have a sample of it. Riker picks it up and examines it. Quark says he may be willing to part with this sample as well as the name of a dealer for the amount that Quark owes him. Smiling once again, Riker says, "Pleasure doing business with you, Quark." They continue to talk as the music swells and the scene shifts to Picard walking down a corridor of the Enterprise. He's heading towards 10 Forward, hoping to find Guinan there. Instead, he finds Kamala, alone. Kamala observes that he's been avoiding her, which he has since his talk with Briam. and asks if something has happened. While Picard tries to avoid answering her question, he can't completely hide from her empathic abilities. He relents and says that he doesn't want to be the one responsible for a war and the resulting devastation of Krios and Valt. It's now that Picard finally admits his feelings for Kamala, though Kamala reveals that she's known all along. But despite his feelings for her, he cannot sacrifice her honor or the treaty for the sake of his feelings. Kamala is visibly saddened, knowing all too well how the treaty binds her and how Picard's duty binds him. In vain, she suggests keeping their relationship a secret, but deep down, they both know that that would be a betrayal of themselves, Picard's duty to the truth, and Kamala's being able to truly be herself with him. Picard tells her that it was Briam that related the full extent of the dire situation between the Kriosians and Valtese. In a thoughtful state, Kamala says that Briam is a good man who has been instrumental in keeping the peace between Krios and Valt for years, as well as being a good friend to her. He would not have attempted to prevent this relationship if the stakes weren't so high. Picard requests that they both think about the price they would pay for their liaison as the scene fades out. Riker returns to the Enterprise with the Gamma Quadrant ore and gives it to the science team for testing. Tests show that the Gamma Quadrant ore is virtually the same as Kriosite and could be used in the Kriosian refineries instead of Kriosite. It may take some time to rebuild their economy, but it should spring back. Riker delivers these findings to Picard and the name of the dealer from Quark, to which Picard jokingly says, "I hope this information didn't permanently ban you from the Dabo tables." To which Riker replies with a smile, "No more than usual." Picard delivers these findings to the Kriosian and Valtese representatives, with Kamala present. While tensions continue to remain frayed among them, the Kriosians can now rebuild their economy and the Valtese are no longer pressured to mine their moon. It may take time, but relations between the two peoples will heal once again. And with that, the conference draws to a close. The delegates have departed from the Enterprise, with only one remaining, Kamala. Picard sees her off in the transporter room, asking for the transporter chief to leave them for a moment. Alone, Picard and Kamala speak one last time before she departs. Kamala thanks Picard for bringing peace between the Kriosians and Valtese once again, though Picard acknowledges that it was Riker who found the dealer from the Gamma Quadrant. Nevertheless, Kamala is still appreciative for all that Picard has done for her. Both acknowledge that the relations between the Kriosians and Valtese is rather delicate right now and will be for some time. No matter what their feelings are towards each other, there is more at stake than the love of two people. Picard bids farewell to Kamala and wishes her happiness. As she steps onto the transporter pad, Kamala asks Picard to write to her. Picard with a smile agrees. With only the Enterprise and Titan left, we see the two Starfleet vessels warp away as the episode comes to a close. And that was my sequel to the next-gen episode, The Perfect Mate. Hopefully as poignant as the original. A bittersweet ending, but a war prevented and in keeping with the episodic nature of Next Gen. But now what do you think? What did you think of my proposed episode? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Is there anything you would have changed? And what are some Star Trek episode ideas floating around in your head? Please, leave comments below and discuss. As always, thanks for tuning in to another Star Trek video. If you like what you see, why not give my video a like and subscribe to my channel? Tell your friends! Until next time...
Now that I know that you're listening to my voice, I find that I can't think of anything to say.